You're fired. Yes, you can say that to a therapist. How do you know when it's time to do that? This is therapists say, Mended Light. So in this segment, I ask you for your not great therapy experiences so I can respond to them and maybe find a better way forward. And we're talking today about times when people have had to fire their therapists and what that looked like. So here we go. LOL, my favorite worst advice was growing up. I was bullied a lot as a kid, and my therapist told me to dissociate to cope with it. I don't know if this therapist got the memo, but we're supposed to help people through dissociative behaviors so that they don't rely on them anymore, not encourage dissociative behaviors. That's kind of like a drug and alcohol therapist saying, you know what would help you with your grief? A beer. That's what that sounds like.
To alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems.
Yeah, that's not great advice. I mean, listen, dissociation is a long-term loss, but it's a short-term gain. It works in the moment. That's why we dissociate. That's why our body and our brains naturally do that. We detach from our experience so that we don't have to be present and feel it. The issue is, as the book title suggests, feelings buried alive never die, that when we dissociate, when we keep things at arm's length, when we bury, when we ignore, when we avoid, it comes up. And it comes up in ugly, painful ways and manifests in ways that disrupt our lives, our relationships, our careers. We have to be able to face things with courage, with tools, with self-compassion, and at a pace that is supportive for us. So yeah, I don't know if that therapist got fired, but should have gotten fired. I had a psychiatrist who was more interested in talking about Ilf and Petrov's writing, they are famous humorists, with my father during my appointments than with me about my symptoms. I changed psychiatrists, then changed them again, but I couldn't find one that would help me. I'm sorry. First of all, I would say don't give up. There are plenty of people who have psychiatrists, psychologists, family therapists that they had to therapist shop for a while until they landed on the one that really helped them in their lives the way they wanted them to. That said, look, there's an important part of therapy, which is joining with people. It's bonding with people. It's connecting with people. But that shouldn't be the therapy. In fact, that should be a fair amount of the first session should be that type of building a rapport, talking about interests, getting to know the person. And then a little bit here and there moving forward is just natural and human and helps us to stay connected. But if you're spending the bulk of your session with your therapist and your dad just joking around and talking about their favorite humorists, obviously very much a problem. And it makes me wonder, was that therapist just not very professional? Were they not very focused? Or were they burnt out? Had they been doing this a long time? I don't know, but all I can say is, yeah, fired. What's even better is when you start with a new therapist and explain to them how you've been down the medication route and are not willing to do that again. But they push back and tell you about new classes of drugs that I haven't tried. It wasn't the only reason I fired her, but it was one of them. Psychiatric medication is a blessing and a benefit and a help for a lot of people. That doesn't mean it's what everybody needs. And also, I wouldn't push somebody who's had an extremely negative experience with something to just keep having that experience, because if they do it enough, it'll start to be healing. I used to work at a mental health agency for people on Medicaid suffering from mental illness. I was the therapist component of a team, and part of that team was caseworkers, and there was a psychiatrist. And that psychiatrist was happy to do his job and to prescribe antidepressants, antipsychotics, anti-anxiety meds, but except in the most extreme cases where there was an urgent need, he encouraged people to go to therapy first and try cognitive behavioral work and try family systems work to change their diet and exercise routines, to get more rest, to have better nutrition, get more exercise, and work through things psychologically and emotionally, and then see what was left over. And for a lot of people, they got to a place where they realized, oh, I'm glad I didn't start with medication because I didn't need medication. For a lot of other people, all of that was only effective when paired with medication, and none of that's wrong. It's all about the individual in front of you. But for you to say, I told my therapist I'm done with meds and I'm not going down that path, and for them to immediately start pressing and saying, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you looked at this. Speaks to a bias and a rigidity. A bias towards medication and a rigidity in exploring other options. And yeah, I would say you were probably right to fire that therapist, especially because you said therapist and not psychiatrist. A psychiatrist, I can understand more. It's like, well, you came to me for help in conjunction with medication because that's what a psychiatrist does. But it's odd for a therapist to be pushing it like that. Just my 2 cents. My last psychiatrist said that the cure for my CPTSD was to watch porn because I'm a sexual assault victim who needs to desensitize myself. That is not how one heals from sexual trauma. And that is a blatant misunderstanding of what exposure therapy actually is. No pun intended, because of the porn. Exposure therapy is about, yes, gradually exposing yourself to something that is traumatizing and working through those feelings. But it's done so in a safe and controlled manner. And most porn, unfortunately, there's definitely relationship positive and sex positive erotica. But most porn doesn't demonstrate realistically what sex is or what your average human body looks like, and very often is not in the context of something that is safe and something that is respectful. I'm not saying that there's not porn like that. I'm just saying a lot of it isn't. So to say just watch porn it's because you're a sexual assault survivor, so you just need more sex to get desensitized to it, is actually stupid. That would be like me saying to a war vet, oh, you've got PTSD? Why don't we watch Saving Private Ryan on repeat and just see what that does for you? That's dumb. Now, I would definitely do something where I am coaching someone how to regulate their physiological symptoms, their panic, their anxiety, their heart pounding, their breathing accelerating, their muscles tensing, how to work through and breathe through a panic attack, right? How to self-soothe and get to a place where they can assess for safety and make a plan for safety. And I would definitely do some psychological exercises once they had that down, where I'm talking them through something that is triggering, but I would never actually discuss an assault or have them watch something pornographic. It would be more like talking about being in a committed relationship or just a healthy casual relationship and being sexually involved with somebody who makes you feel safe and somebody who's trustworthy, and having that conversation, and as they feel triggered, working through it and processing it. This was terrible advice. Another therapist said I was lying about a man stalking me even though I had physical evidence. She didn't disclose he was her nephew and I didn't know his family. So here's what you do. When you're a therapist and you have a nephew who is stalking your client, you refer your client to somebody else because you've got a major conflict of interest there. This therapist was more interested in protecting the family than in doing right by the client. And listen, I get it. Not that I would condone stalking by a family member, but if there's a conflict of interest between a client and a family member, I am not in a neutral ground to serve the needs of my client, and they must be referred out. Another therapist said I had negative energy, and that's why I attract people in my life. So basically, I deserve all this. That last one, if that's how the therapist said it, little harsh, little blunt, little offensive. It may be that this is the gist of the message, so this is how it's remembered. And something similar was said, but with a lot more tact. And there is truth. I hate to say it, there is truth to the notion that if you are negative and pessimistic and sarcastic or rude or whatever negative energy means in this case, we tend to attract what we're putting out there. This channel is an example of that. The sheer number of positive, non-judgmental, loving people we have in our community and authentic people, we're trying to do that and to be that, so we're attracting that. So that last one, I don't hate the gist of the advice because you can change your mindset and attract different people into your life. But it sounds like it was maybe said with not a lot of tact or compassion, and that would be my pushback on that. So what do you think of these experiences people have shared or my thoughts? Do you have any counter thoughts, anything where you feel differently? Let me know because I want to learn from you. And what poor advice have you received from a therapist that you'd like for me to respond to? Let us know in the comments below. I've got a video for you to watch next. It's called Why Traditional Therapy is failing. And it's all about how therapy needs to continue to evolve as society does, as individuals do, and what the next generation of therapy is looking like. And it's something we offer at Mended Light, and that you can watch right here. The link is going to show up somewhere. Until next time, folks, keep shining. We need your light.